The screen flickered, static crawling like ants over the edges. And then it snapped into a picture I wish I could erase from my mind. A puppet stood center stage, its felt face sagging in ways it shouldn't have, like the fabric had melted, but no one bothered to stitch it back into place. Its button eyes didn't just shine, they bulged, wet and glassy, as if something alive stared out from behind them. The colors were wrong, too wrong. The grass wasn't green. It was this oversaturated chemical shade of yellow that hurt to look at, and the sky bled a pale, washed-out pink. The whole scene hummed, like the tape itself was grinding against reality. Then the laughter started. Not the kind of laughter you'd expect from a children's program, bright, happy, harmless. No. This was a looping, jagged sound, as if someone had recorded a single laugh, spliced it with a scream, and dragged it out until it frayed at the edges. It kept going, over and over, too loud, too close, too human. The puppet lifted its felt hand, stiff and jerky, and waved at the camera. Not at the audience, not at some imaginary child on the other side of the screen. At me. Its jaw opened wide, far wider than the stitching allowed, until threads snapped and hung loose like torn flesh. From inside that cavern of darkness, a voice leaked out, flat, deliberate, not belonging to any child's show I've ever seen. I know you. That was it. Just 2 words. 2 words that shouldn't have mattered, shouldn't have shaken me to my core. But the way they were spoken, it was like the puppet had been waiting for me. And then the laughter started again. Louder, faster. The picture shook, colors bleeding, the frame warping as if it couldn't hold whatever was inside. I shut the TV off, but the sound didn't stop. For a full 5 seconds, the laughter kept bleeding into my living room, muffled but alive, like the tape hadn't finished with me yet. If you've never heard of the show name, don't feel left out. Almost no one has. And those who did, they don't talk about it. Not anymore. There's a reason for that. I know I should have left it alone. Should have accepted that some pieces of childhood are buried for a reason. But I didn't. I wanted to know why no one remembered. And what I found, what I watched, still hasn't let me go. Let me explain how I found it. I've always had this thing for old television. Not the polished, overproduced stuff we get now, but the cheap, grainy programs that aired when nobody was paying attention. I grew up in the kind of house where the TV was on from breakfast until bedtime, babysitting me more than my parents ever did. Cartoons, public access shows, weird educational specials. I devoured all of it. When I got older, nostalgia hit me hard. Maybe it's because adulthood is boring, or maybe because those flickering images felt safer than the world I was living in. Either way, I started chasing that feeling, scouring thrift shops for battered VHS tapes, old box sets, anything that smelled faintly of childhood dust and sun-faded plastic. There's something comforting about popping a tape into a VCR and watching those wavy lines settle into focus. It feels like opening a time capsule, one that doesn't belong to history, but to you. And I wasn't alone. There's a whole online subculture built around this exact obsession. Forums full of night owls and tape collectors who swap digitized clips, argue about obscure series, and hunt for lost media like it's buried treasure. I slid into that community so easily it scared me. People would upload commercials from the 90s, forgotten pilot episodes, regional shows that barely aired outside a single county. I loved it. The more obscure, the better. But there was always one thread, the elephant in the room, that nobody touched. Every so often, a new member would ask about this kid's show they have remembered, some fragment of a theme song or a weird character. And every time, the response was the same: silence, posts locked, accounts deleted, not banned, deleted, like the person themselves had vanished. I asked once, just once. The thread stayed up for 20 minutes before a moderator locked it with a single word: don't. That should have been enough. It was. Because if there's one thing you learn in those communities, it's this: the forbidden questions are always the ones worth asking. Still, the show became an itch I couldn't scratch. No screenshots, no recordings, nothing that proved it had ever aired. The only consistency was the avoidance, the palpable discomfort any time it came up. And that, ironically, made it feel more real. Imagine standing in a room where everyone's talking, laughing, reminiscing, until you mention one specific memory. And suddenly, all the voices die at once. That's what it was like. And it stuck with me. For months, I lurked, dug through dead links, followed breadcrumb trails that ended in error messages and 404 pages. Every path led nowhere. Or worse, led somewhere that had been deliberately wiped clean. Like someone was scrubbing away the footprints of this thing as fast as I could follow them. It wasn't until much later that I found him, the seller. Just a random username, buried in a side thread no one paid attention to. He didn't advertise, didn't trade like the others. But when I saw a casual mention that he had a copy, I knew. My pulse spiked. My hands shook when I sent the first message. And when he actually replied, that's when everything started. His username was nothing memorable, just a jumble of letters and numbers. The kind of handle you scroll past without a second thought. But buried in a months-old thread, under layers of tangents about forgotten cereal mascots and local access jingles, he dropped a single comment: I've got a copy. No one responded. No one even acknowledged it, but I saw it. I messaged him right away. Hey, I saw your post about that kid's show. Do you actually have it? Him, don't know what you're talking about. That was the first red flag. Not denial, not confusion, just a pause and then a deflection. I pressed harder. The one no one will talk about. The one that keeps getting deleted. You said you've got a copy. Him, you don't want to watch this. It should have ended there. It didn't. My heart was hammering as I typed back, fingers almost shaking. Me, I do. I need to see it. I just need to know it's real. Him, it's real. That's the problem. He went silent for hours after that. I thought maybe he'd blocked me, or maybe the mods had stepped in. But just before midnight, another message appeared. Him, if you're serious, I'll send it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. No refunds, no second chances. I tried to laugh it off. Probably just some gatekeeping tape trader trying to make his junk sound mystical. But his words didn't read like someone exaggerating. They read like someone afraid. We arranged the exchange through an anonymous payment app. He refused to digitize it, refused to upload even a screenshot. Said it wasn't safe to do so. The only way was physical, VHS only. That was red flag number 2, but I ignored it. A week later, the package arrived. I expected a standard padded envelope. Instead, it came in a beat-up cardboard box, sealed with so much tape it looked like he was trying to lock something inside. My name wasn't on the label. No return address either. Just my street, my city, and the words, for you. Inside, under crumpled newspaper, was the tape. It wasn't like the others I'd collected. Most VHS tapes come with handwritten labels, old stickers, maybe a logo from a local station. This one was blank. Matte black plastic, no markings, no words, no hint of what it contained. The window where you'd usually see the spools of tape, covered over with a strip of black electrical tape, like he didn't want me to glimpse what was inside. It smelled wrong, too. Not like dust or mildew. More like burnt plastic, faint, but sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. I turned it over in my hands, half expecting to find a hidden message carved into the casing. Nothing, just smooth, featureless black. That night, I messaged him again. Me, got the tape. Is this some kind of prank? Him, it's not a prank. Don't watch it alone. That was his last message. He deleted his account minutes later. I should have listened, but of course, I didn't. Because if you spend your whole life chasing ghosts and lost memories, when you finally catch one, you don't just walk away. I sat down, slid the tape into my old VCR, and pressed play. The tape clicked inside the VCR, and after a burst of static, the screen lit up with color. At first glance, it looked harmless. Typical kids programming from the late 80s or early 90s, cheap sets, flat backdrops, colors just a little too bright. A painted cardboard sun hung crooked in the sky, smiling down on a grassy field that looked more like a green carpet rolled across plywood. Then the characters appeared. They were puppets, mostly. Big-headed, floppy-limbed, with wide, stitched mouths and googly eyes that wobbled when they moved. Their voices were sing-song, cheerful, each syllable dragged out like they were trying too hard to be enthusiastic. I almost laughed. This was what everyone had been so afraid of. This bargain bin Sesame Street knockoff. The theme song kicked in, if you could call it that. A repetitive little jingle, just 3 notes looping under a chorus of children's voices, chanting a name I couldn't quite make out. The audio warbled, as if the tape had been played too many times, the pitch rising and falling in ways that made my stomach twist. Still, the episode began like any other educational show. The puppets introduced themselves with exaggerated gestures. One wore a patchwork jacket, another a crooked hat. They spoke directly to the camera, telling the boys and girls at home that today they were going to learn something very special. The lesson was sharing. Innocent enough. They passed around a plastic toy, singing a little rhyme about how it was better when it's together. Their movements were stiff, jerky, like whoever controlled them wasn't used to working puppets. But it was easy to overlook. Old shows always had their quirks. Then I noticed the teeth. Not every puppet had them, but the main one, the one with the patchwork jacket, did. Human teeth. Not cartoonishly big foam ones, but small, irregular, real-looking enamel set inside that cloth mouth. Every time it smiled, the teeth glistened under the studio lights. Too real. Too wet. I told myself maybe it was some strange attempt at realism. Maybe they glued dentures into the puppet's mouth. It was weird, sure, but not terrifying. Not yet. The cracks kept showing, though. The background music would sometimes cut off mid-note, leaving a few seconds of silence before lurching back in. The puppets. Laughter looped unnaturally. The same hollow sound repeated too perfectly, like a soundboard button being pressed over and over. And then there were the words. Between their cheerful songs, I swear I heard them mutter things under their breath. Nothing clear, just syllables that didn't fit the script. Once, I could have sworn the puppet in the hat whispered, "Don't look." But when I rewound it, the line was gone, replaced by static. It was unsettling, but not enough to make me stop. If anything, I was hooked. I leaned closer, convincing myself the strangeness was part of why the show had been buried. Some failed pilot, maybe, pulled from the air for being too strange for kids. But then came the ending. The puppets gathered in a circle, holding hands. Their voices dropped to a low, almost reverent chant. The camera zoomed in slowly, the edges of the frame darkening, as if the set itself was collapsing inward. The puppet with the teeth leaned closer to the camera, filling the screen. Its glassy button eyes caught the light, reflecting 2 pale pinpricks that almost looked alive. And then it spoke, not in its sing-song voice, not in the cheerful cadence of a kid's show host. Its tone was flat, cold, direct. "Do you know your name?" I froze. The question wasn't playful, wasn't rhetorical. It was pointed, accusatory, like it was speaking directly to me. The episode cut to black after that. No credits, no fade out, just silence, followed by the grinding hum of the tape spools. I sat there staring at the blank screen, waiting for something else to happen. My skin prickling like I'd been caught doing something I wasn't supposed to. And yet, wasn't even the worst part, because despite every instinct telling me to eject the tape and burn it, I didn't. I pressed rewind. I got ready to watch more. I told myself I'd only watch one more episode. Just one more, to prove to myself that the ending wasn't what it seemed, that it was some glitch, some production quirk. That was the lie I told anyway. The second episode started the same way as the first. That tinny, warped jingle, the crooked cardboard sun, the puppets wobbling onto the stage. Familiar, almost reassuring. For a moment, I felt silly for being so shaken before. This one was about bedtime. Going to sleep, the puppets called it. They sang a lullaby while tucking a rag doll into a toy bed. But the song wasn't right. The melody slumped and dragged like it was being pulled through mud. And the lyrics, what I could make out of them, were wrong. Close your eyes and take a breath. Don't wake up. It's better. The audio warped, dipped into static, then snapped back in. The puppet with the human teeth leaned over the bed, smiling too wide. Forever sleep is safe sleep. The way it said it, flat, almost reverent. Not a line for kids, a sermon. The episode ended with the rag doll under the blanket, unmoving, while the puppets held hands and sang the last line again and again. Forever sleep is safe sleep. I should have stopped, but I didn't. The third episode was about sharing again, but not toys this time. Food. The puppets sat around a fake picnic, cardboard sandwiches, and plastic fruit. They giggled and passed pieces back and forth, but something in the audio was off. When the puppet in the hat bit into his apple, the crunch didn't sound fake. It sounded wet, organic. Then the camera cut closer, and I realized it wasn't plastic at all. It was meat, raw, dripping, marbled red and white. The puppets chewed noisily, wet smacks and slurps that went on far too long. They urged the boys and girls at home to chew too, to taste together. And when they smiled, their mouths weren't just wet with spit. Strings of something dark clung between their teeth. The episode ended with one puppet staring directly into the camera, lips stained, whispering, "Take your bite, we'll wait." The screen cut to static. By the fourth episode, the show stopped pretending. It opened with silence, no theme song, no sunshine. Just the puppets already on stage, sitting in a row. Their heads tilted, their button eyes catching the light at strange angles. The lesson, listening. But they didn't teach it. They did it. The puppets sat still, silent, for what felt like minutes. Their felt chests rising and falling like they were breathing. Every few seconds, one of them twitched, head jerking, as if they'd heard something outside the frame. Then the patchwork puppet spoke, not to the children, not to each other, to me. "SHHH, we can hear you breathing." I froze. My TV volume was low, but in the silence of my living room, my own breath sounded too loud. I actually held it for a moment, half convinced they really could hear me. The episode ended without explanation. just silence, then black. By the fifth episode, I wasn't even pretending anymore. I was hooked, sickened, unsettled, but hooked. This one tried to disguise itself as a game. The puppets sang about hiding and seeking, darting behind cardboard trees, and peeking out with exaggerated giggles. But the game didn't stop when the camera stopped cutting. The screen lingered on empty scenery, props, shadows, while you heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, a voice counting down from 10. Not cheerful, not playful, deadly serious. When the countdown ended, the camera whipped to the patchwork puppet's face. Inches from the lens, teeth bared in a rictus grin. Found you. That was the whole ending. Just those 2 words. And on it went. Each episode twisting further, tearing away the mask of innocence. One taught honesty, where the puppets forced another to confess some unseen sin, chanting at him until his stitches split and stuffing spilled from his chest. One taught kindness, where they held hands with a crying child actor, an actual child, not a puppet, and whispered over and over until he stopped crying, his face slack, eyes vacant. The show had rules. I started to notice them. Every episode ended with a phrase directed at the viewer. Not every phrase made sense, but they built a pattern. Do you know your name? Take your bite. Found you. We can hear you breathing. Like pieces of a larger puzzle. Like instructions. And the puppets weren't just speaking at random. Sometimes they referenced things I'd done, things I'd thought. The words hit too close. The way they paused between lines, the way their button eyes seemed to focus differently each time the camera cut. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why I kept watching. Why I didn't smash the tape and burn it after the first whisper, the first crack in the facade. I wondered that too. But you don't understand what it promised me next. Every episode pulled me deeper, dangling the idea that if I just kept going, I'd uncover something. That there was meaning hidden in the static, in the whispers, in the patterns. And maybe, just maybe, that final piece would explain why no one else dared to talk about it. And so I did. I kept watching. I rewound. I pressed play. I followed the show deeper into itself, even as the dread built like a sickness in my gut. Because by then, it wasn't just about curiosity. It was about answers. And I thought I was ready for what came next. Somewhere along the way, the show stopped feeling like a show. At first, it was just the unease, the sense that the puppets were speaking at me rather than to some generic audience. But by the 7th or 8th episode, it wasn't ambiguous anymore. They weren't talking to boys and girls at home. They were talking to me. One night, the patchwork puppet leaned toward the camera, teeth gleaming, and said my name. My actual name. Not a common one, not something they could have guessed. I laughed, because what else do you do when a piece of cloth stitched together decades ago speaks to you directly? I told myself it was a trick. Maybe some tired editor spliced in audience recordings. Or maybe I was just hearing what I expected to hear. Pareidolia. Brain filling in blanks. But then it said it again, clearer, slower. And that's when I stopped laughing. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, the puppets, the crooked set, the way the frame warped when they leaned too close. Even when I wasn't watching, I felt like I was still inside the show, like my living room had become just another set piece. The tape called to me from the VCR. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I'd sit on the couch, swearing I wouldn't press play again, and then I'd blink and realize the static was already rolling, the theme song already bleeding through the speakers. And it wasn't just on screen anymore. The phone started ringing at odd hours. I'd pick up, and no one would be there, just that same looping laugh from the first episode, tinny and distant, as if piped in from a broken speaker. Other times, I'd hear breathing. Not heavy, not threatening, just there, waiting. Once I heard it outside my window. Laughter, faint and warbling, like a bad recording. I ran to the glass, yanked the curtain aside. Nothing but my street, empty and dark. But the laughter didn't stop. It grew louder, like it was already inside the house. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. You're probably thinking I'm exaggerating, that I'm dressing up the story to make it creepier. Fine, believe that if you want. But if you think I'm making this up, you can check for yourself. Dig through the old forums. Search the dead threads. If you look hard enough, you'll find scraps, mentions, fragments. I'm not the first to see it. I'm just the one still stupid enough to talk about it. And trust me, you don't want to see it. The worst part wasn't even the hallucinations, the paranoia, the noise in the dark. It was the way the show knew me. In one episode, the puppets played remembering. They sat in a circle and told stories about their favorite days. At first, it was generic birthday parties, sunny afternoons. Then, the patchwork puppet described a day at the lake. The way the water smelled, the way the mud squished between your toes. It was my memory. I hadn't thought about it in years, but it was mine. A summer afternoon when I was 7. I'd been at the lake with my cousins, building castles out of wet sand. Nobody else could have known about it. But there it was, my childhood playing out from the mouth of a puppet with human teeth. I sat frozen, heart pounding, wondering how far it went, how much it knew. The answer came in the next line. The puppet tilted its head, eyes wide, and said, "Your favorite part was when you were alone." And it was true. God help me, it was true. That's when I realized the show wasn't for children. It wasn't even for an audience. It was for me. I stopped trying to rationalize after that. I stopped pretending it was just a weird tape or some prank left behind by a deranged production crew. Whatever this thing was, it had wormed its way past the screen. It was in me, and yet I kept watching, because after every grotesque lesson, Every whispered memory, every breaking of the fourth wall, there was still that hook. That promise that if I kept going, if I just pushed through one more episode, I'd get to the one no one else ever talked about. The episode buried under silence, the one that made people vanish from the forums. I told myself I'd stop before then, that I'd quit while I still had some shred of sanity. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. I couldn't. I needed to see it. And so, sleep-deprived, paranoid, half convinced, I'd lost my mind already, I pressed play again. The tape whirred, the screen lit, and the final episode began. It didn't open with a theme song this time, just static. Not the gentle snow of an empty channel, but a violent hiss that clawed at the speakers, like 1,000 voices whispering over each other at once. I almost turned it off right then. Almost. When the picture finally snapped into focus, I wished I had. The set was gone. No painted sun, no cardboard grass, just black. A void swallowing everything, with the puppets suspended in it like marionettes without strings. Their button eyes gleamed too bright, catching some invisible light source. And they were wrong. Their felt was shredded, their seams ripped open, stuffing bulging like tumors. The one in the patchwork jacket, the leader, had lost half its face. The teeth were still there, exposed, glistening in the dark. Every time it moved, threads stretched and snapped, as if the act of speaking was tearing it apart. They didn't introduce the lesson. They didn't sing. They just stared at the camera, silent. For so long I thought the tape had frozen. Then, in unison, their jaws dropped. The sound that came out wasn't a voice. It was a shriek, metallic, warped, the kind of noise that makes your stomach cramp and your eyes water. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. It wasn't just sound, it was inside me, rattling in my bones. When it stopped, I realized I was shaking. The patchwork puppet leaned forward, stitches splitting further, and spoke. Are you ready for your part? Not the audience's part, not the children's part. Mine. The screen flickered. A child appeared real this time, not a puppet. Maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing in the void. Their eyes were blurred, fuzzed out like someone had scrubbed them from the film. They opened their mouth to speak, but the voice that came out was mine. Word for word, it repeated something I'd said earlier that week. A throwaway comment to myself while packing my living room, muttering about how tired I was. Hearing it from that child's mouth made my stomach flip. The puppets surrounded the child. They whispered to it, their button eyes never leaving me. One reached out, tugging at the child's arm until the skin tore like paper, revealing stuffing inside. The child didn't scream. I did. The picture warped, bending like heat haze. The voices overlapped again, hundreds of them, saying fragments of sentences, half-remembered jingles, instructions, confessions. Beneath it all was one phrase, repeated endlessly, growing clearer every time. Do you know your name? I wanted to turn it off. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was rooted there, eyes burning, lungs tight, like the show had reached out and pinned me in place. The patchwork puppet leaned so close, its teeth filled the screen. And then, God help me, it said things I can't repeat. Things I won't. Not because I'm protecting you, but because I don't know if putting them into words would make them real again. All I'll say is this: it knew more than it should, more than I'd ever told anyone. The screen cut to static again. But this time, the static shaped itself. Faces flickered in the snow. Mouths open in silent screams. Some I recognized, people I'd seen on the forums. Avatars now turned into blurred features and hollow eyes. Others I didn't. One of them looked like me. The image snapped back to the puppets, now mutilating themselves. They clawed at their seams, ripping out stuffing, yanking off buttons, tearing their cloth apart with frantic glee. All the while, they chanted in broken voices, "We can hear you breathing. We can hear you breathing." And then, abruptly, silence. The final image. The patchwork puppet, alone, mangled beyond recognition, but still smiling. It tilted its head. "You'll tell them, won't you?" The screen went black. No credits, no static, just black. And then, I don't remember. Honestly, I don't. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was on the floor, hours later, the TV off, the tape halfway ejected like it wanted me to finish the job. I should have destroyed it then. Maybe I did. I don't even know anymore. Some nights, I dream about burning plastic. Other nights, I swear, I can still feel the weight of that blank black cassette on my shelf. All I know is this: I saw the final episode, and I was never the same. After the final episode, nothing felt real anymore. The first few days, I told myself I was just shaken up, that I'd been too immersed, too sleep-deprived, too willing to let a weird old tape crawl under my skin. But the longer I tried to ignore it, the more it leaked into everything else. I'd close my eyes to sleep and see the static. Not dream about it, see it, buzzing across the darkness, faces flickering just out of reach. Sometimes I'd wake up certain there'd be stuffing scattered across my floor, or a button starring up from the carpet. And the laughter, it followed me. Faint, hollow, looped laughter. It would come from behind walls, from the phone line, from the silence between songs on the radio. Always the same cadence, as if someone had pressed play on the same laugh track and left it running just for me. I thought maybe the tape was cursed, that destroying it would free me. So I tried. I snapped it in half, threw the reels into a dumpster across town. But a week later, when I came back to my apartment, it was sitting on the shelf. Not cracked, not burned, not even scuffed. Perfect. Waiting. I don't remember putting it back. I don't want to. The online forums where I'd first heard whispers of the show, some of the people there are gone. Not just inactive. Gone. Their accounts wiped, their posts erased as if they'd never been written. But I remember them. I remember their avatars, their usernames. A few of the faces I saw in the static looked too much like them for coincidence. Maybe I'm next. Maybe this is what happens when you watch too far. I know some of you will think I'm exaggerating or making this up for attention. Believe me, I wish I were. But if anyone remembers this show, please say something. Leave a comment, a theory, even a single word. I need to know I'm not the only one carrying this thing around. There's a part of me that still wonders if it was all staged. If maybe the show was some underground art project or a cruel experiment. That's the version of reality I want to believe. But then I think about the things it said, the way it used my words, my memories, things no one else could have known. And there's one scene I didn't describe, not because I forgot, but because you don't want it in your head. Trust me, I've lived with it, and it's already too much. If the tape really is still here, if it's still waiting, then maybe one night I'll give in and play it again. Or maybe it'll play itself, whether I want it to or not. Until then, all I can do is warn you. If you ever stumble across a VHS with a crooked label, the ink smudged, the name half erased, don't watch it. Don't even touch it. Because if you do, the question will find you. And once you hear it, you'll never stop hearing it. Do you know your name? I've gone back and forth on whether I should even be telling you this. Part of me thinks that by saying it out loud, by dragging you into it, I'm only spreading whatever it is, feeding it. But another part of me, the part that still believes in warnings, in stories passed down as survival tools, feels like I don't have a choice. So let me be as clear as I can. Do not look for this show. Don't ask around. Don't go digging through VHS bins at flea markets or message boards promising lost media. Don't type its name in your search bar. Don't even think too hard about it. Because once it has your attention, it doesn't let go. I know that sounds paranoid. I know it sounds like I'm just another unreliable narrator in a sea of creepypastas. But tell me this, why do you think no one remembers it? Not just vaguely forgotten, like some obscure cartoon. Wiped clean. No records, no clips, no scraps of merchandise, not even a trademark. Things don't just disappear like that. Not unless something wants them to. And that's the part that still keeps me up at night. Because I swear sometimes I hear the theme song. Not when I'm watching the tape. It's long gone, I think. Or maybe it is. But sometimes, when I'm drifting off to sleep, 3 warped notes loop in the dark. A chorus of children's voices humming just under my breath. It always stops the second I sit up, like it knows I'm listening. I've checked the walls, the vents, the street outside. Nothing, just silence. And then when I lie back down, it starts again. If you think this is just in my head, I'd love to believe you. Really, I would. But then there are the other things. The people who have messaged me saying they've seen something similar. The usernames that vanish before I can reply. the private messages I wake up to that are gone by morning, like the system deleted them itself. I can't prove any of this, and maybe that's the point. So here's what I'll leave you with. If any of you reading this have seen or heard anything like what I've described, even a fragment, even a rumor, please tell me. Comment below. Message me. I need to know I'm not alone. I need to know this isn't just sinking its claws into me. But be careful. Don't say too much. Don't type the name if you know it. That's how it starts. And if one night, when the room is dark and you're half asleep, you hear a tune you can't quite place, just 3 notes, looping endlessly, don't hum along. Don't listen. Don't let it in. Because if you do, it will ask you the same question it asked me. And once you hear it, there's no way back. Do you know your name? If you hear the song, it's already too late.